in the Championship. The LBC Markets report the FTSE 100 has closed down 30 points at 73.28. The pound buys $1.28 and €1.16. LBC weather: showers for most parts of the UK this evening, with longer spells of rain in the northwest of England, a low of -1. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Holly Jones.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair.
Every Monday to Thursday at this time, 6 o'clock, LBC's Election Call, where I shut up and you speak to the politicians. Tonight, from the Conservatives, John Whittingdale. He was Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport under David Cameron. He's a senior figure in the 1922 Committee of Conservative MPs. He is an enthusiastic Leave supporter. You might want to talk to him about Brexit, about Nigel Farage's announcement today, about free TV licences for people over 75, Leveson Part 2, some of the things we talked about at this time last week: social care, poverty, housing, climate change. But it is up to you. You decide what to talk about in LBC's Election Call. And the number of call is 0345 60 60 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC. Welcome to the programme. How's it going?
Thanks, Eddie. It's going well so far. I enjoy election campaigns, but we've still got a long way to go.
OK, let's get straight to the call, shall we? Anne is first in Streatham. Anne, what's your question for John Whittingdale? Hello.
Hello, gentlemen. My question is simply this. Over the weekend, we saw a great deal made about the Labour Party's plans and how much it would cost. 1.2 trillion was the figure quoted. And this, as it turns out, would be across 5 years, not immediately as they go into power. My question is, how come the Conservatives have costed up Labour's policies and how much they'll cost, but they haven't costed up their own, and they also haven't given us an economic impact assessment of exactly how much Boris Johnson's Brexit is going to cost the country? So we know everything about Labour, but we're completely blind about the Conservatives.
And stay on the line and see if you're happy with the answer. Here is John Whittingdale.
Well, Anne, we still haven't had the publication of the manifestos from any of the parties yet. And I think when that happens, you will see much more detailed plans. And certainly for my party, the Conservative Party, we will make very clear how much our commitments are going to cost and how we intend to pay for them. But we are in a position now where we're able to spend more money after having put rights out the damage that was done by the last Labour government, which is why you're seeing more money on hospitals, 20,000 extra police officers. But nevertheless, economic responsibility is still absolutely fundamental, and what we will not be doing is splurging the kind of figures which the Labour Party have been talking about, and which we published the document, which was all based on pledges or commitments they'd made at their conferences and elsewhere.
Anne?
The last Labour government was over 9 years ago. The extra police are not extra because Mrs May cut 20,000 of them with the help of London Mayor Boris Johnson. With regard to fiscal responsibility, we've spent billions on Brexit. We have somebody who hired a ferry company with no ship. So fiscal responsibility I do not buy. I would like to know how much this Brexit that we're supposed to be voting blind for is going to cost the country. And I think it's pretty rich to cost up the opposition's policies and not your own.
Well, as I say, I think you will see in due course fully costed proposals.
Well, if I may, Anne's point is the Conservatives have made a lot of play of what they say Labour's spending plans will mean, but they haven't spelt out their own. Sajid Javid refused to reveal whether the government's carried out an impact assessment on our future relationship with the EU. Do you know if such an impact assessment has been carried out?
Well, there have been all sorts of analyses. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Exiting the European Union Select Committee, and we've taken evidence from a lot of people. Part of the difficulty is that it depends on what assumptions you make. As you said in your introduction, I believe that once we have left the European Union, we have a very good economic future in front of us. We are able to reach trade agreements, which we can't do now with countries right across the world.
And you may well believe that, but isn't it the government's responsible position to tell us what it thinks the economic assessment would be?
Well, it depends, as I say, on what assumptions you
exactly.
make.
So you tell us what the assumptions are, but aren't we entitled to know?
Well, there have been plenty of reports published by various independent organisations and indeed by the government about that. But Brexit, to some extent, and describes it as Boris Johnson's Brexit. It isn't Boris Johnson's Brexit. It's the people's Brexit. It is what people voted for at the referendum, and the government is committed to delivering that. And one of the problems we have with the economy at present is that the uncertainty which is hanging over us and has gone on ever since the referendum, which is now 3 years ago, is holding us back. And that's one of the reasons why we need to get Brexit delivered.
Right.
And Boris Johnson's deal will do that.
And do you want to come back?
Yes, I do. First of all, Boris Johnson's deal won't do that, because we now know that at the end of 2020, we're going to be looking at a potential WTO Brexit. So that means that the free trade agreement or the next level that you all keep going on about, is actually going to take much longer than you're promising. You're not going to get Brexit done by Christmas. What you're effectively doing is just cracking an egg in order to make a cake. All you're doing is just the first stage. You're cracking the egg. So get Brexit done is a fallacy. In addition, I'm really not impressed by a blind sort of faith that we're supposed to have in politicians. I want to know, how much is it going to cost the country? Why are you talking about extra money for this and extra money for that when you haven't given us an economic assessment of how much your key policy is going to cost the country? It's a very simple question. How much is it going to cost the country?
Well, what we do know is that for the period which will, what we call the transitional period, which is about 14 months after Brexit, we will meet our financial obligations, and those are all set out in the withdrawal agreement. After that, we will no longer be required to pay into the European Union budget anymore. And as I say, we will then be in a position to reap the benefits. And there is a lot of investment which has been held back simply because of the uncertainty created by Brexit. And Boris Johnson's deal can be delivered within a matter of just a few weeks. Parliament actually voted in favour of the second reading before the election was called. But if we can get a good Conservative majority in Parliament, then we can ratify Boris Johnson's deal, which is on the table and has already been agreed by the European Union.
If you have a question for John Whittingdale, it's 0345 6060 973. And I thank you. Simon is next in Basingstoke. Hello, Simon. What's your question for John Whittingdale?
Yes, my question is the Conservative Party actually going to start conserving things like freedom of speech, which we seem to have lost in this country, like the protections that we owe our veterans? We've been promised so many things by the Conservative Party in the past, in the manifesto, everything from Brexit to other things, and they've not delivered. And they've been more than happy to deliver things that they never actually stood on. So I want to know, if I vote Conservative, am I actually voting for a Conservative Party or the Lib Dem lights, as I seem to have been doing in the past 10 years?
John Whittingdale.
Well, freedom of speech is something which I care passionately about. I served in government overseeing the media, and one of the reasons I was unhappy with some of the proposals that were put forward for the regulation of the press was that it did represent a restriction on the freedom of the press and freedom of speech, and that is something which I agree is fundamentally important in a free society, and I will continue to speak out in favour of freedom of speech, and I don't accept that the Conservative Party has restricted it. I think our support for freedom of speech is shared by all my colleagues.
What about Simon's broader point that he votes Conservative and gets Lib Dem light?
Well, I don't think he's going to get Lib Dem light. The fundamental difference between ourselves and the Liberal Democrats is that they want to revoke Article 50 and stay in the European Union.
Yeah, that is a big difference. What else?
Well, the Liberals are actually, traditionally, they have said that they believe in individual liberty, but actually they've become more and more left-wing in recent years. And the Lib Dems are much closer now to the Labour Party than they would be to a Conservative government.
Simon?
Well, I think I've lost track of how many former Conservative MPs have defected to the Lib Dems. So I disagree with that.
All right, Simon, Gordon is next in Herrenberg in Germany. Thanks for calling in, Gordon. What's your question on LBC's election call?
Yeah, my question to the Conservative politician there is, very simple. What are the benefits of exiting the European Union?
Well, I campaigned to leave. I did so because I felt that we were being controlled too much by the European Union. We were having regulations imposed on us. We had European court judgments which we had to pay. There was the small matter of the fact that we had to pay into the European budget and each year about £10 billion net every single year. And of course, we were not able to control our borders and so could not deliver on the pledge which successive Conservative governments had tried to deliver on, which was to reduce the overall number coming into this country. And so by being outside the European Union, we will have that freedom. We will have control of our own laws and our money and our borders.
Gordon?
I really don't believe that. I think you're just repeating the homilies that have been spouted at us for the last couple of years. I find it very hard to believe that there will be any benefit at all to the United Kingdom leaving the European. I mean, I'm a Brit living in Europe. I've been living here since 1984, which is quite a long time, and benefiting from membership of the European Union, obviously. And I just cannot believe these platitudes anymore.
Do you think, is it possible in any way, Gordon, that you might be mistaken? I understand what you believe, but maybe just let me finish the thought, Gordon. I just want to say maybe if and when the UK leaves the EU, you will see some benefits. Do you think that's possible?
For me, not at all. Obviously, any British person living outside the UK in the EU is going to be disadvantaged. There are going to be problems. There are going to be bureaucratic hurdles that we have to get through. We will, because the governments under which we are living in France or Germany or Spain or whatever will accommodate us in some way. But there was no benefits at all to Britain not being part of the family.
John Whittingdale, would you accept Gordon's point that whatever benefits you may see for the UK as a whole, for UK citizens living in continental Europe, there's no upside to Brexit?
Well, I hope that the rights that they presently enjoy, they will continue to be able to do so. We made it very clear that those European Union citizens who are living in the UK will continue to enjoy all the same rights that they have now. And already you're seeing other European countries saying that they will reciprocate. For instance, the Spanish government has very recently
and
said
people
that.
like Gordon must hope that's the case. But my question is, would you agree that there's no great benefit to them from Brexit?
Well, I mean, I hope that they will rejoice at the fact that I believe that our economy will prosper, that we do have these new trading opportunities. And I very much hope that part of the reason why I wanted to achieve an agreement with the European Union was so that we could still have a lot of the reciprocal arrangements, which would allow citizens of this country still to travel easily to European Union countries and vice versa.
All right. Thank you very much. John Whittingdale here for the hour on LBC's Election Call. What do you want to talk about? What are the election issues that you're most passionate about? 0345 6060 973. We're here Monday to Thursday throughout the election campaign. Tonight, John Whittingdale from the Conservatives. More news now, 6:16. Here's Holly Jones.
Nigel Farage has decided not to stand Brexit Party candidates in more than 300 of the 600 constituencies he targeted after saying the Prime Minister had changed his stance on his deal. It's hoped thousands of jobs can be saved after confirmation British steel has been bought out in a rescue deal by a Chinese firm. An inquest has ruled the death of a schoolgirl who fell from a ride at Drayton Manor theme park was accidental. LBC weather: showers for most parts of the UK this evening, with longer spells of rain in northwest England, a low of -1.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. The North Circular Road stays closed northbound because of an accident just after the Redbridge roundabout, so there are severe delays from the Beckton roundabout. It means there are also queues southbound on the North Circular after the air ambulance landed earlier, and there are also long delays on the A12 out of town from Bow. On the M20 westbound, all traffic's being held between the M26 and Junction 2 for Ruton because a horse box has broken down. There are queues on the M4 westbound because of an accident at Junction 5 for Langley. One lane stays closed there. It means it's very slow on the M25 clockwise to Junction 15 as well, and it's slow through the Limehouse Link Tunnel westbound because the car's broken down.
This is LBC.
Children and chilled. That's like sirens and snoozes. The two just don't sit well together. But with Churchill Insurance, they do. Because if your car was ever in any kind of knock, Churchill will replace your child's seat no problem. Oh, yes. So when it comes to your kids, you can just chill. Churchill. Proof of ownership required for seats £250 or over. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
This is LBC.
I'm sorry. You have progressive memory loss. When you hear these words, the outlook is bleak, but we're working to change that. We're Recognition Health, the brain and mind experts, and we're running clinical studies in London and Guildford. If you volunteer, you'll receive free access to a new generation medication as well as comprehensive medical care. With your help, we can change the future of MCI, as in mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease.
You have progressive memory loss, but here's what we can do.
To find out more about Recognition Health and taking part, go to brainandmindexperts.com.
What matters most to you? Saving money or helping the environment? With Evergreen Power, you can do both. Insulating your home with soft spray foam insulation will keep the heat in your home this winter like never before, with its air barrier seal. Reducing airborne noise, condensation, damp and mould, your loft will be transformed into a dry, usable space, while cutting your heating bills and carbon footprint, so helping the planet. For a free survey, search Evergreen Power.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Which Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Looking for your perfect kitchen? Visit roomsense.co.uk.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Barbershop singers from Gloucestershire, with a joint mortgage and a credit card for over a year. Has an Experian credit score of 862, and to his friends he goes by the name of Hugh of Hugh.
At Experian, we use your credit history to help find deals that are right for you and only you. Hugh. Experian Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. T's and C's apply.
LBC's Election Call. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC. Call 0345 6060 973. LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair.
John Whittingdale from the Conservatives is here tonight. 0345 6060 973. Here's a text from Philip who says it's not so much a question as a point to put to your guest. Based on Nigel Farage's announcement today, it's clear the Tories and Brexit Party are in alignment in a right-wing Brexit axis. That's phenomenal, says Philip, for the Lib Dems and Labour.
Well, I don't think it's entirely correct to describe it that way. We both want to see Brexit done. Now, the Brexit Party are quite critical of Boris Johnson's deal. I don't agree with them. I think Boris has got the best deal that we could have got. But what I think the Brexit Party recognise, and I believe to be true, is that the only way we will get Brexit done is by having a majority Conservative government in Parliament. That is why we haven't been able to until now, because we haven't had that majority. And it's a recognition, a very welcome recognition by the Brexit Party, that we have to get a Conservative majority if we are to deliver Brexit.
And the impact of today's announcement from Nigel Farage is what, do you think?
Well, obviously for people like myself who are standing for re-election, it means that I assume I don't have a Brexit Party opponent, which I welcome, because I will be able to make it clear that only by voting for me can we get Brexit done. I think it is still going to be challenging because it isn't just re-electing Conservative MPs. We need that majority, which we lack at the moment. And the only way we will get that is by winning constituencies which we don't currently hold.
And if Boris Johnson does what Theresa May did at the last election and starts off with a big lead, loses it, he has to go, yeah?
Well, I mean, I very much hope that is not going to happen. I mean, you've got to bear in mind Boris Johnson has only been leader of the Conservative Party for just a few months. And already he has achieved a remarkable amount. I mean, this is somebody who said that he could get a new deal from the European Union, and everybody said it wasn't possible. I lost track of the number of people who said, of course, the European Union are never going to reopen the agreement. They did, and that was Boris's achievement. He has got a good deal, and I hope that he will now have a good majority in Parliament after the election.
OK, here's Peter now in Banbury in Oxfordshire. Hello, Peter. You're through to John Whittingdale.
Hello. There is a very famous clip on YouTube of Dominic Cummings talking to a group of Conservatives, where he says that most Tory MPs don't care about the NHS or the poor, and all the audience guffaw in delight. Does Mr. Whittingdale agree with Dominic Cummings?
Well, I'd not seen that clip, and I'd be surprised.
You should go watch it.
I'd be surprised. But Dominic Cummings does not speak for the Conservative Party.
Do you wish he didn't speak much at all?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't agree if he did say that, and I think it's completely untrue.
Get rid of him then.
Well, Dominic Cummings, as I say, is not standing for election as a Conservative Party candidate.
But he's the person behind your election strategy.
Well, I'm not even sure that is correct.
So what's he doing?
He was certainly very closely involved in Boris Johnson's Brexit planning.
Well, I mean, Dominic Cummings was involved in the Leave campaign, and I was involved in the Leave campaign at the time.
Do you like him?
I don't know him very well.
You were both involved in the same campaign.
Well, I mean, I was not a central player in it. I did meet him a couple of times, and I respect what he managed to achieve. Well, I respect the fact that he managed to help us achieve a victory in the referendum campaign, which went against all expectations. I think he has a very impressive strategic mind, but he is not a Conservative Party spokesman. And I can tell you that I think no Conservative would agree with those kinds of comments if those are what he said.
Peter.
Well, I don't think that's true. I mean, there's a film called Under the Knife. I'm talking about the NHS first. The film Under the Knife, which I think every person listening to this should see, is a pretty terrifying film about what's going to happen with the NHS under the next Tory government. We've also seen the Panorama programme and what the US wants to charge us for drugs. And then you've just got to look at the state of our hospitals, the food banks, the rough sleepers, rough sleeping's gone up by 169% since your lot have been in power. The average age of death of homeless people is 44. I just can't understand how you can possibly say we really care about the NHS and the poor. You clearly care about your privileged friends. You don't care about the people. And that's what people really need to understand in this country.
John Whittingdale.
Well, I don't agree with that. And I think actually if you look at our record in supporting the NHS, it is very strong. We have consistently put more money in. You had the Health Secretary, my colleague Matt Hancock, speaking just in the last couple of days about our plans for 40 new hospitals.
Please don't keep repeating that 40 new hospitals, because it's not true.
Well, it is the declared. Well, you can't build a hospital overnight. It is the intention over time.
But don't pretend that 40 is 6 and 6 is 40. It's 6, not 40.
Well, it is going to take time to get the new hospitals. No, but the Health Secretary has been very clear. And we have already put a massive injection of money into the NHS. But
so you should. It needs money.
It does need money, and we will deliver it. But the fundamental point, which is something that I and my colleagues have always recognised, is that we do want to do more to support the NHS. Also to support people on low incomes. It was a Conservative government that introduced the living wage, which was the biggest boost of the people on very low incomes.
What about these rough sleepers dying at the age of 45?
Well, that is, obviously I'm upset by anybody dying at a young age. We do need to do more to reduce rough sleeping. Rough sleeping is a very complicated problem. There are a lot of issues around rough sleeping to do with mental health problems. There are places available, but I fully accept we do need to do more.
Okay, Sheila is next in Edinburgh. Sheila, you're through to John Whittingdale.
Oh, hello, John. I wonder, the Conservatives are a Leave party, and they have also pledged to reduce carbon emissions. And I'm wondering, how will new trade deals with the USA, South America, India, etc., all places that are much further away than Europe, impact on this pledge?
Well, it's a fair point that if we're trading, then obviously that may involve shipping, or it may involve air flights, and we do need to try and do more. And there have been reports actually in the last couple of days about some things you could do to reduce the carbon emissions from shipping and aircraft.
Well, make them go a bit slower, but I mean the point about geography is not going to be overcome unless you've got some master plan you're not telling us.
Well, the other thing, of course, is that where this country is very strong is in services which don't require transportation. I mean, they aren't physical goods.
Well, let's not change the services. Let's deal with the question that Sheila was asking about.
Well, we are a trading
Sheila,
country.
if you come back, Sheila, sorry.
Oh, I just wondered if impact assessments have been done.
Impact assessments on the impact
on the impact of the trade deals. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we haven't yet been able to sign the trade deals because we're still, at the moment, prevented from doing so by our membership of the EU. But I mean, I want to see trade deals with some of the fastest growing economies in the world, because that's what's going to produce jobs here. And the truth is that the economies which are likely to be the biggest in 10 years' time are places like China, Brazil, India, Indonesia, and North America. They are not the countries of the European Union.
Sheila, last word to you.
It would seem to me to make much more sense to deal directly with our nearest neighbours if we're serious about a climate emergency.
Sheila, thank you. Lee in Harlow text to say, please ask your guest why I should vote Conservative. I'm 62 years old and my wife and I are both working for the same employer on a 0-hours contract. We are researchers and work in a professional role and have no job security. Labour have promised to eliminate such contracts. As Lee in Harlow.
Well, in some cases, 0-hours contracts can be appropriate for people. It's a matter of choice to some extent. But we have managed to create more jobs than any previous government. Our employment is very high.
A lot of people don't have a choice on 0-hours contracts. And what do you say to Lee, who clearly isn't happy in his?
Well, I'm sorry that Lee is not happy. I would hope that Lee would nevertheless prefer to be in employment than not having a job. I think every study that I've seen shows that people do better if they are actually in a job. I don't obviously know the precise circumstances of Lee's job, so I can't say whether his 0-hours contract is appropriate or not.
Well, he doesn't have any job security. That's his concern.
Well, there are some firms that do use 0-hours contracts in order that they may have fluctuating workforces, but the important thing is that we create jobs, and we have been very successful at that. I hope, obviously, those jobs can become permanent jobs.
All right, thank you for now. This is LBC's election call. John Whittingdale here till 7. If you have a question for him, it's 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, tweet at LBC. More news now. Here's Holly Jones.
Nigel Farage has decided not to stand Brexit Party candidates in more than 300 of the 600 constituencies he targeted. He says the Prime Minister has changed his stance on his Brexit deal and he'll now focus on Labour seats instead. Labour's calling it an alliance to sell out the country, while the Liberal Democrats think it will backfire. Boris Johnson's insisted the best way to get Brexit done is to vote Conservative. It's hoped up to 4,000 jobs have been saved at British Steel after a Chinese industrial giant signed a deal to rescue it. It would see Jingye purchase the steelworks at Scunthorpe as well as its other mills in the UK. British Steel went into liquidation in May. Hundreds of tons of rubble have fallen onto a house after a wall at an 11th century castle collapsed in East Sussex. Emergency services, including a hazardous area response team, are at the scene in Lewis. LBC weather: showers for most parts of the UK this evening, with longer spells of rain in northwest England, a low of -1.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, LBC.
Would a Labour government under Jeremy Corbyn deploy nuclear weapons? Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry.
That's a very good question. I'm not prepared to say one way or the other.
You can't say.
All I can say is that the Labour government will do everything in order to protect our country.
Extending the life of the current Trident missiles into the early 2060s will cost around £250 million. So you're prepared to pay for it, but you don't know you'd ever deploy it.
That has always been the position of any responsible government in the past.
You find that quite extraordinary?
No, I don't. Throughout the decades, Prime Ministers have always said, we have a deterrent and we're not prepared to say in what circumstances we would use it.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7, LBC.
That's the sound of you, squeezing £2,000 out of your old polluting vehicle. The Mayor Sadiq Khan has introduced the new ULEZ car and motorcycle scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. You could get £2,000 for scrapping a car and £1,000 for scrapping a motorcycle. which you could use for a newer, cleaner vehicle or other ways to get around. The scheme is only available to people on certain means-tested benefits or non-means-tested disability benefits who own a polluting car or motorcycle. Check if you're eligible. Search TfL Scrappage. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
This is a recorded message from the Survivalist Network. Signs of an impending zombie apocalypse are now at level purple, but don't panic. Our intel shows that for £199 a month with 0% APR representative, you can locally access the Toyota Hilux Invincible, the only vehicle with the build strength to withstand savage hordes of the undead. Once inside your Toyota Hilux, stay on this frequency for updates. You'll be fine.
0% APR representative on new sales of Hilux Invincible over 42 months. £199 per month. Customer deposit of £9,701 when financed through Access Toyota by 16th of December 2019. £12,525 optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Coffee shop, cashback, cat flaps, cashback, beanbags, rucksack, hire car, buy a car, flapjack, cashback, dumbbells, cashback, takeaway, holiday to anywhere the sun is at, bum bag, laptop, big match, hatchback, binge watching, paintballing, crab fishing, cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Whatever you spend your money on, get money back every time with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
I'm sorry. You have progressive memory loss.
When you hear these words, the outlook is bleak, but we're working to change that. We're Recognition Health, the brain and mind experts, and we're running clinical studies in London and Guildford. If you volunteer, you'll receive free access to a new generation medication as well as comprehensive medical care. With your help, we can change the future of MCI, as in mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease.
You have progressive memory loss. But here's what we can do.
To find out more about Recognition Health and taking part, go to brainandmindexperts.com.
LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair. Text 84850.
Every Monday to Thursday during this election campaign, we will have a politician here for you to question. I will do my best to shut up. In fact, I'll do that now. Here's Mike in Soho with a question for John Whittingdale. Hi.
Hi, Mike. Hi. I just wanted to ask, has the government and the DCMS done anything or everything it can do to stop foreign interference in this upcoming election? Can they reassure us that there will be no foreign interference either through the digital platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and so forth, as well as other means?
Well, I mean, I'm obviously concerned about suggestions that there has been foreign interference, and it obviously has not just been in UK elections. We know, for instance, that there was quite a lot of Russian activity against the Democratic campaign in the United States, and there has been in the French election. So, I don't underestimate the wish of the Russians to try and exert influence using new media. Now, I do think that we have made some changes. Facebook have decided that they will allow political advertising, but it needs to be identified as to who is the publisher, and that I think is very important. You'll then have one or two platforms like Twitter decide that they don't want political advertising at all. But I think what appeared to be a wholly unregulated space in the past is now, rules are being put in place because awareness of this has increased a lot.
Mike, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I'm sorry. First of all, it's two minor issues, but one, I don't believe it is regulated at all. And if there is regulation, is that regulation from DCMS or from the government, or is that self-regulation from the platforms? Because that's what you're suggesting. Secondly, as far as I've read, Facebook said that they would have run that Conservative ad with Keir Starmer, the so-called satirical ad. Now, as far as I'm concerned, satire from a political party has no role to play in an election. So Facebook is allowed to run those ads. Is that right?
Well, that particular advertisement was trying to convey a message, and I don't think anybody has suggested that it was illegal. I mean, that is part of an election campaign.
But wasn't it misleading?
Well, I don't think it was misleading. The message of it, which was that Labour's Brexit policy is in a complete mess.
The message was
that
a politician couldn't answer the question, when in fact he did.
Well, I agree that the juxtaposition, if you like, was not entirely accurate, but then again the Conservative Party put up the genuine footage so that people could see that. It was an attempt to get across that message.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's just ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, I'm not trying to be partisan about this, because I'm sure if you, as you say, if you leave this digital space unregulated, there will be a huge free-for-all, and we'll start squabbling about these minutiae, whereas the real issues of the elections will go completely by us. That ad, or that, whatever you want to call it, first it was put out in one format, then they put out the second, or the complete clip afterwards, or attached it. Then they put out another version of that as well. So, and all you're trying to do is grab headlines and grab noise on the platform. That's not the way. And I think the electorate, we want to see political parties run an election campaign.
Mike, thank you for that. How worried are you about the Russians interfering in this election, John Whittingdale?
I would be worried if I thought there was a serious threat. I have not seen evidence to suggest that there is. I mean, we know that there are Russian bots that are churning out. But actually, I think in terms of the analysis that was done, for instance, at the time of the referendum, it was shown that actually they had very little effect. I do think this. I agree that we need to look at changes to electoral law. That is something which Parliament is intending to do. But I think we need to tread very carefully. Your previous caller, about 20 minutes ago, talked about freedom of speech. And the idea of having some kind of regulator approving the messages of political parties, I think is very dangerous. And we do enter into freedom of speech. And actually, the electorate are sophisticated enough, they can make up their own minds. It doesn't need some government regulator.
The Sunday Times yesterday reported that 9 Russian business people who gave money to the Conservative Party are named in this secret intelligence report on the threats posed to our democracy by the Russians. This report is being sat on by Downing Street. Would you encourage Downing Street, in the interest of democracy, to let us see it before the election?
Well, look, I haven't seen the report.
No, none of us has. That's my question.
The people on the Intelligence and Security Committee obviously have, but the way the way that committee works is that their reports are treated differently. I chaired a select committee for a long time, but it was not the same as the Intelligence and Security Committee. And obviously when you're dealing with classified material, you do need to look very carefully before publishing it to make sure that you're not jeopardising national security. And it's always been the case that ISC reports are given much greater scrutiny. The government doesn't have any approval over other select committee reports. It does over the ISC.
Does it concern you that 9 Russian business people who gave money to the Conservative Party are named in this report?
Well, I don't know whether they are or not, because I haven't seen the report. Well, I've seen that report.
Does that concern you?
Not necessarily. I mean, I know 1 or 2 people of Russian origin. I know one in particular who has supported the Conservative Party. He is one of the fiercest critics of Putin that I know. So I think just because somebody is giving money and has Russian origin, it doesn't mean that he's acting for the Russian state. I mean, it certainly would not be the case in the case of the particular individual that I know who is now a UK citizen and is a citizen because he fled Russia.
You don't think, given that we are in an election period, it might be incumbent upon the powers that be to get a move on, go through all the security checks they think are appropriate, and let us see this before the election?
Well, I think actually, as the Downing Street's made clear, that this is a matter to lay before Parliament, and Parliament is not there.
Exactly.
So it's not possible.
Hillary Clinton, who knows a bit about Russian interference in elections, said tonight, it's incredibly surprising and unacceptable that in your country there is a government report sitting there about Russian influence and your current government isn't releasing it.
Well, I don't believe that there is evidence of significant Russian influence. There may have been attempts by Russia, and certainly we know that they were churning out these fake messages on Facebook and other social media in previous occasions, but I don't actually think that it has a dramatic effect. But obviously it's something that we do need to be aware of. There are countries, I go election monitoring. I've monitored elections in places like Ukraine, in Bosnia, and indeed in the United States. And we are now entering a world where social media, cyber warfare is much more prevalent, and that is something we need to be guarding against.
All right, John Whittingdale here till 7. Tony, you're through on LBC's election call. What's your question?
Good evening, John. I just wanted to know, if the Conservatives win the next election and Brexit is done, are you planning more trade union reforms to make life more difficult for trade unions in the UK?
Well, I'm not aware of any specific proposals on trade union law reform. I think obviously you have to look at behaviours to make sure that trade unions aren't abusing their powers. I am deeply concerned at the suggestion that the post office, for instance, might call a strike just at the time when the post office does have a duty, the Royal Mail rather, has a duty to distribute election literature through the free post so that people have an informed choice. So, I think that is something which I would be concerned about if the Royal Mail goes ahead with that.
Why do you ask the question, Tony?
I'm just concerned with Brexit that they're going to be clamping down on unions, or they're going to make sure that companies have more powers to make sure that union reps aren't available to work in the workplace. They're going to just try and make sure that union reps can't represent their members and make it more difficult for them.
All right, Tony, I think we'll have to wait for the manifesto for a concise answer on that. Judy says, would John be willing to press the nuclear button should the need arise?
Well, I'm a strong supporter of nuclear deterrence. I believe it has helped to keep the peace ever since the Second World War, and it is an absolutely essential part of our defences.
Would you press the button, is the question?
Well, Prime Ministers have traditionally been unwilling to give a specific answer, but if you believe in deterrence, you have to have your enemies believe that you would if it came to it. I don't think anybody would want to ever do so.
No.
But there's no point in having a nuclear deterrent if you tell people there is no circumstances under which you could ever use it.
Judy also asks of you, does he believe it's appropriate that we don't actually own a Trident submarine, that we lease them from an American company?
Well, they are under our control. Quite where they are manufactured doesn't seem to me, and actually they are manufactured in a lot of it in Britain, but the point is that it is a British nuclear deterrent. It is not an American nuclear deterrent. It is a British nuclear deterrent which we control.
0345 6060 973. In our last 15 minutes, what's your question for John Whittingdale? You can text 84850, tweet at LBC. Here's a news update at 7:15 from Holly Jones.
The Liberal Democrats claim Nigel Farage's decision not to stand Brexit Party candidates in seats won by the Conservatives in the last general election will backfire. It's hoped up to 4,000 jobs have been saved at British Steel after a Chinese industrial giant signed a deal to rescue it. A man's been jailed for 16 weeks for letting off fireworks during a 2-minute silence on Remembrance Sunday in Greater Manchester. LBC weather: showers for most parts of the UK this evening, with longer spells of rain in the northwest of England, a low of -1.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. The North Circular Road stays closed northbound because of an accident just after the Redbridge roundabout, so there are severe delays with queues from the Beckton roundabout. It means there are also long delays on the A12 out of town from Hackney and on the A13 from Poplar. There are queues on the M4 westbound from junction 4 for Heathrow to junction 5 for Langley after an accident earlier on. It's very slow on the M20 westbound. There's a lane blocked between junction 3 for the M26 and the A20 because a horse box has broken down. There are queues in Leatherhead on the A245, Randalls Road in both directions. It's partly blocked because of an accident at Oak Lawn Road. And South Western Railway have delays of up to 15 minutes through Clapham Junction because of a signalling problem.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
Cross question 8, but what I really want to know is what you think of what a certain Nigel Paul Farage has done today. Bet you can't wait to tell me.
Ian Dale on LBC.
And now we go live to Tyrrell's Farm.
When it comes to making truly tasty crisps, the folks here in Herefordshire are masters of their craft. Every batch of local spuds is thickly sliced, then hand-cooked with their skins on to give them their characterful curls and extremely satisfying crunch. These nifty curls also ensure every last sprinkle of seasoning stays on the crisps and not in the bag. So, choose Tyrrell's crisps for your next big bash. They're terribly, terribly tasty.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit, so you can keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. Plus, get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and we can quote by video call after work or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Based on actual events.
After 9/11, everyone was scared. Scared it might happen again.
Critics are calling the report a 5-star gripping political thriller.
The CIA destroyed tapes of interrogations.
I want to find out what was on the tapes.
A large-scale saga of corruption, justice, and overwhelming relevance. Starring Adam Driver, Annette Bening, and John Hamm.
If we stop now, aren't we a part of the cover-up?
The Report, in cinemas Friday and on Amazon Prime Video November 29th. Certificate 15.
Right, what have we got here?
55-year-old male with the worst case of drop jaw I've seen, Doctor.
Goodness, his jaw's quite literally dropped onto the floor, hasn't it?
He was trying on the latest hearing aid technology at Specsavers.
What? Specsavers have high-tech hearing aids? That is astonishing.
Apparently, these ones are rechargeable and connect to your smartphone and TV. Doctor. Doctor.
My jaw.
I need some help over here. Get the latest rechargeable Bluetooth hearing aid technology at Specsavers from £1,395 a pair. Ask in store for details.
Sharing credit card details on scraps of loose paper. Finding battered receipts in the wash. Stressing out your accountant. Expense management doesn't have to be stuck in the dark ages. Say hello to Soldo. Company cards that do your expenses for you. Give your team prepaid cards to simply spend, snap the receipt, and that's that. Spend smarter. See the light at soldo.com.
LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair.
John Whittingdale is here. Michael McGrath just said on Twitter, is John Whittingdale happy with a border down the Irish Sea?
Look, Boris Johnson's deal is, in my view, the best we could get. I'm not entirely happy with every element, but I will support it. Well, I understand the concern of my friends in the Democratic Unionist Party, and there will be some additional checks. There are already some checks between goods moving from the UK, or from Great Britain rather, and Northern Ireland, so it's not unprecedented. But no, I understand that, and I hope that we will in time find a way around that. But
and who's right, by the way, about these checks? Boris Johnson or the Brexit Secretary?
Well, as I say, there are already some checks. I think the Prime Minister...
Boris Johnson says there aren't any. He says there won't be any.
Well, there are some already now, and I think what Boris Johnson was referring to was additional checks, and it's particularly about goods moving from Northern Ireland to Britain, where there shouldn't be checks.
But Steve Brexit says there would be paperwork, and Boris Johnson says there won't be. Now, they can't both be right, can they?
Well, as far as I understand it, there won't be any additional complications, particularly moving in that direction. I think going in the other direction, that's about the integrity of the single market. That was why we had all these problems with the backstop, and this is a way of allowing us to leave the customs union, which has always been one of the principal objectives of leaving the EU.
James is next in Oxfordshire. Hi, James. You're through to John Whittingdale.
Yeah, hi. My question is will the Conservative Party announce anything for students' loans? At the moment, they make a profit on student loans, and I think the original idea was that the student loans were non-interest or non-profit making, but now current interest rates are something like about 5%, which is much more than the government pays for it. So they're currently making profit on it, and will they be doing anything in the manifesto to reduce that and make it more viable for students?
Well, I mean, I've got two children who've recently left university, and they both have quite substantial student loans. Now, part of the system at the moment is that until you reach a particular level of income, you don't have to start repaying them. And of course, some people won't, and therefore not all loans will get repaid. And so I think it's to take account of that, that others are interest-bearing, so that the overall system doesn't cost too much. But I actually do think that the burden of debt is a problem for students, and I think we do need to look at it again. Now, I speak as a backbencher. I'm not a member of the government, but
not at this stage. You're not. But who knows after the election?
Well, certainly it is my view as somebody who obviously talks to young people with student loans. This is something where I think perhaps we are going to need to look at reviewing it again.
Thank you, James. Neil is next in Tring. Neil, what's your question for John Whittingdale?
Yes, good evening, gentlemen. I think that the integrity of our election is more under threat from industrial-scale voting fraud through the postal vote system. And I want to know if the Conservatives will, if they win, conduct a full review of the voting system. We have a situation where 25% of votes are now postal, and a lot of the reported fraud comes from urban Labour-held districts. And I think it needs a full review, including the Electoral Commission.
Are you going to have a review?
Well, we've already said that we're going to bring in measures to tighten electoral law. And I don't think there is widespread electoral fraud in this country, but there have been worrying reports in certain places of it taking place. And just one of the things which I mentioned to an earlier caller, I mean, I'm an election monitor for what's called the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. So I've been to sit in polling stations in a number of countries. And in every single country where I have observed elections, in order to vote, you have to produce an identity document to prove that you are the person you say you are. And yet in Britain, that is not the case. And we are completely out of line in that. And I do think that, therefore, the requirement that voters should actually have some proof that they are genuinely the person they say is a sensible measure and would reduce the potential, at least, for fraud.
Charlie is next in Culross. Charlie, hello.
Hi there, Eddie. I would just like to ask John, considering any Brexit's going to be bad for Scotland, especially Boris Johnson's Brexit deal, would it not be better if the Conservative Party, if they became the power holders, would it not be better if they gave the Section 30 order rather than the judiciary doing it for them?
Sorry, I didn't catch the last bit of the question, Charlie.
Sorry, considering that Scotland's just about to mandate the SNP to Westminster for another referendum on Scottish independence,
right,
would it not be better if the Conservative Party gave the Section 30 order instead of the embarrassment of the judiciary having to do it for them?
Well, I think the last thing we want is either a second referendum on the question of the membership of the European Union or indeed a second referendum on independence for Scotland. And with a Labour government, there is a real risk we're going to get both. But I don't agree that leaving the European Union under Boris Johnson's deal is bad for Scotland. One of the things that it will do is restore control over our fisheries policy, which is very important in Scotland.
Charlie.
Also, the Scottish people voted to remain part of the United Kingdom in a referendum recently.
And part of the EU.
Well, they are part of the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. That is a decision which is taken by the United Kingdom, and you can't have some bits of the United Kingdom opting out of it. It is a decision taken by the nation.
Charlie?
Well, you can't have democracy in some parts of the UK and not democracy in the other. At the end of the day, the SNP are going to have it in their manifesto to hold a second independence referendum. And if they get voted in, it looks like 50-plus seats. Me being in Scotland, probably have more of a knowledge on that than anybody that I'm speaking to tonight. But would that not mandate them for them to have another referendum? That's the Scottish will. That's the will of the Scottish people there.
If the SNP do fantastically well at this election, doesn't that mean the IndyRev 2 should be back on?
No, I don't think it does, because we have had, as I say, a referendum in Scotland relatively recently, where it was made absolutely plain that this was going to be the decision of a lifetime, just as the decision to leave the European Union was. What you can't do is keep coming back and saying, well, I know you voted this way, but we're going to ask you to go and do it again.
But people change their minds, don't they?
Well, both of the referendums, the one on Scottish independence and the European Union, voters were told absolutely that this was the moment on which they would make that decision, and they made it.
A question from this text: what does the government plan to do with rampant in-work poverty?
Well, one of the things that, as I mentioned earlier, we have done is to increase the living wage. It was the Conservative government which introduced the living wage, and we have increased that, and that has done more to address people on very low incomes than possibly any other measure.
But people are sometimes doing 1, 2 and even 3 jobs, and they're still in poverty.
Well, I hope that we can go on increasing the living wage. That is
need to do more than that.
That's a matter for the Chancellor. Well, that addresses those who are upon the lowest incomes who are in work. But there are other measures which I hope that we will be able to take. But I think our record on this is actually a pretty good one.
Thank you very much for doing this for us tonight. Before you go, what's the size of the Conservative majority after the election?
Well, I hope that it will give us a majority which enables us to deliver Brexit, which means ratifying the agreement which the Prime Minister has reached, getting 12, it through.
50.
I hope it's as large as possible. I want to see a Conservative government with a good majority, and I will celebrate. The bigger the majority, the more I shall celebrate.
Thank you. Not yet. Don't laugh in John Whittingdale's face.
Oh, I was laughing with him, not at him.
Thank you very much for doing that for us tonight, getting LBC's election call off to a good start. We'll be back with more tomorrow. Tom Swarbrick is here tonight at 10. Next, here he is, Ian Dale.
Eddie, thank you very much. So, what effect will Nigel Farage's decision not to stand in 317 Conservative seats in the election have on the final result? Has he done the right thing for Brexit? Or if you're a Brexit Party supporter, do you feel betrayed at what you see as a sellout to the Conservatives? And if you're one of the 317 Brexit Party candidates who are going to have to stand down now, what do you think about what your leader has announced today? Has the Brexit Party's souffle just deflated? Or do you think the party can still have a material effect in the opposition-held seats it continues to put candidates up in? Plus at 8, cross question, we've got a think tank special. I want to call it a wonkathon.